Dear Jesus, help us to spread your fragrance everywhere we go. Flood our souls with your spirit and life. Penetrate and possess our whole being so utterly that our lives may only be a radiance of yours. Shine through us and be so in us that every soul we come in contact with may feel your presence in our souls. Let them look up and see no longer us, but only Jesus. Stay with us, and then we shall begin to shine as you shine. So to shine as to be a light to others. The light, oh Jesus, will be all from you. None of it will be ours. It will be you shining on others through us. Let us praise you in the way you love best by shining on those around us. Let us preach you without preaching, not by words, but by example, by the catching force, the sympathetic influence of what we do, the evident fullness of the love our hearts bear for you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And in that prayer, we are able to gather this evening because of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And I would hope that all of us would know that by receiving the prayers of the Sisters of St. Joseph, we are receiving all of the people who have embraced the charism of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And that includes our professed sisters, our associates who are lay men and women who are living our charism, our agrees who are lay women who decided to go deeper and taken a canonical vow of fidelity, and all of our ministry partners. So as we share this evening and are graced with the Spirit of God that comes through our sharing, may we also pray for all of those in the St. Joseph family who are praying for us, so that as we enter into our lives, we continue to share the grace that God wants to be present for those who we encounter each and every day. So we begin this evening. Our first part is with healthy cooking. And our sister chef for today is Sister Rosario Bobadilla. So Linda is going to introduce our illustrious speaker, presenter this evening.
Okay. Well, first of all, I live just across the hall practically and up a few steps from where Hermana Rosario made that dish. And the entire mother house had a wonderful aroma. So we are liking all these cooking things that are taking place here at the mother house. Anyway, yes, I have the privilege and joy to introduce our presenter tonight. She's a woman I've known for as long as I've been in community for a lot of reasons, but one of my greatest joys was having the opportunity to be present at a couple conferences during my formation years. I loved her sense of humor most of all, but she definitely has a message that is very holistic. So I have the privilege of introducing Lynn Levo, who is a licensed psychologist. She probably will say these things. She's a lecturer, but she's an engaging lecturer, I can tell you that. She is a consultant to many religious communities, both men and women, and others around not only the United States, but beyond. And as I said before, she has a lot to say that kind of touched me from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. She has a wonderful topic for us this evening, choosing hope, not despair. And in these days, in this time of our lives and with what's going on, I can't wait to hear your message, Lynn. So I'm going to close my mouth. So welcome, Lynn Levo.
Thank you. And I think we're going to have some PowerPoint slides. We're going to get those up, and then will begin. While we're waiting with that, the title I chose was Hope is a Choice That Matters. And so I think that, it's so important that we understand that hope is, we need to be active, and it is something that matters. If you notice the little quote from Pope Francis, optimism disappoints and hope does not. So we're really going to make a clarification about, many people say we need to be optimistic. Understand the difference, you'll know that hope is really what we're talking about. So if we go to the next slide and we say, what do we mean by hope? And this is really from looking at where we've been with hope and what we understand now. Have you ever thought about buying a lottery ticket or Powerball? I think that's a big one that's happening across the country. Have you ever thought about just saying, I'd like to win the, just maybe $1 million, we could go with not the big prize, and really what you're doing there is you're really not so much interested in the money, but what the money will help you be about. And that's really what we talk about when we talk about hope. It's a desire for something good to happen. And so when you hope for something, you're really having, at least at some point or at some level, you're hoping for more life. And when we have this kind of hunger, we become aware of that we also are dissatisfied with who we are now and our desire for a future in which more life is possible. So really, it's never about the money. It's about what the money could do or this could do for us. So we just don't want to put up with the current reality as we are living it personally and sometimes communally and as a country and as a world. So hope really encourages us to work for change for the future that we desire. And it won't come by magic. It really comes from choosing and acting. Jürgen Moltmann is a German theologian who has taught about hope, really studied hope for 30 years. And he adds this to the picture. He says, hope is future oriented, divinely inspired dissatisfaction with what is. That those of us who hope in Christ, which I think all of us do who are listening, can no longer put up with reality as it is because too many people are suffering. So we're really talking about the hope that war will end. We're hoping that poverty will end. We're hoping that there will be less racism and less discrimination, and so really, Moltmann tells us that peace with God sometimes means conflict with the world that has evolved to where it is today. Just think about climate and the impact of climate change. It's something that we want to be different. And so really he's talking about that we desire a promised future of oneness in many ways, and that can only come about by work. And so we say, how will we respond? What's the true meaning of hope and how can we understand it better? So the next slide, I'm going to talk about, this is the ability to, I don't know if I can do, here we go. Hope is not optimism. And really, I like my little turtle here. And if you get the picture, he's lying or she's lying on her back and OMG, I'm flying. Really not true. Optimism is defined as being confident of a future or success that doesn't really pay attention to reality. And so one of the ways we are really able to be hopeful is naming the reality honestly, which we'll do in a minute. So hope is a feeling that something wanted might happen. And that's an interesting thing to remember about hope. It really is, we hope it might happen. It's not a guarantee. If it was a guarantee, we'd be sure. So hope is confined or is related to the desires of each one of us within the limits of reality. So we're not going to give up on reality, but we're going to hope within the reality that we are facing. And so the next slide talks about naming the reality honestly. And if you think about the time we live in and how important it is to be hopeful, a time of high anxiety and threats to survival, when we talk about war and we talk about poverty and we talk about racism and we talk about hunger, many threats to survival, and we're facing a lot of fragmentation as well. And the fragmentation in this country politically, and also even in our church, where Pope Francis has encouraged us to, and encouraging the church to bless our LGBTQI brothers and sisters, and we have controversy about a simple blessing. So we're dealing with a special class of issues right now. And a lot of that has to do with diversity, that we have new understandings of that diversity exists. We're called to embrace and include those who are different than we are. And there are different processes and tools that are going to be needed, one of which is really creating safe environments. So psychological safety is a critical thing of providing a safe environment where people can be themselves and we can be in relationship with them as they are. So for us, for you and me, self-awareness becomes really critical. So what does my emotional life look like? What are some of the major feelings I'm living with at this point? What are my relationships like? And really, and it's so important to understand that hope cannot happen in isolation. And so relationships become critical. They are the stuff of life. And then social interactions are at the heart of coping with a complex and chaotic reality. Being with and for others is so critical. And so we have to ask, what story are we telling ourselves? As Sisters of St. Joseph, we have to ask, what story are we telling ourselves? And each individual one of us, sister or not sister, has to, what story am I telling myself? Am I naming the reality honestly? Have I kind of gotten into a rut where I say there's nothing I can do? It is what it is. Do we kind of get into that kind of a mentality when in fact we always have choices? So are you and I called to break through any what we call bubbles of illusion? So letting go of illusions or kind of stuck ways of thinking can help us free our imagination. And also it can give us new energy, courage, generativity, which is about giving life. And it also helps us to be hopeful. And so we want to talk about hope, not despair. And so when we talk about hope in the next slide, we really are talking about a refusal to accept the closed world of despair. And that really is an important thing, that when we despair, the world is closed, we don't see options. And so the prospect of possibility is something that we need to keep in mind as part of the journey that we're on. And it's really been assured to us by God as early in the Old Testament with Jeremiah, where we hear in Jeremiah, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." How do we keep that in mind, especially on the tough days? And so we need to discover a new way, a dream that avoids, look at these two things: resignation of despair, and that, resignation, nothing I can do, no choices. And also the suicide of resistance. Now, those are powerful words, but that when we resist, when we fail to see that there are possibility or that we have a choice, it creates a different way of living. It really is a life of despair. And so we really don't want to just be about survival. We want a future that flourishes with values of honesty and welcoming and hospitality, and customs that are able to evolve, and memories and our charisms, seeing our charisms in a new context. So I love this by Elizabeth Johnson, a sister of St. Joseph, who says, this is God's dream, a flourishing humanity on a thriving earth in an evolving universe, altogether filled with the glory of God. Such is the vision and the praxis, the way we have to live, that we are being called to in a critical age of Earth's distress. The warmest January in history we just experienced in this country. So to be hopeful today is a humble stance. We don't have all the answers, but it does involve a radical trust in God's promise and a clear recognition of what we don't know, but are willing to discover. And that's from Dennis Edwards, again, ecological theologian from Australia. And so we say a little bit more about not despair, but hopelessness, which is another thing we can fall into, where we need the next slide, that a core component in hopelessness is an inability to generate possibility. And I think that's what we have to ask. Have I kind of gotten stuck where I don't think I can generate possibility in my personal life, in our communal life, in the life of the neighborhood in which I live in? And hopelessness has many facets. I think we skipped a slide here. Oh, I skipped a slide. Sorry about that. And so what we're really talking about is how psychology has added to the theology. I apologize. And so we just want to look at 4 critical elements. And what's very interesting about this is in psychology's contribution is it really fundamentally names that part of being human means to be hopeful. It's built into our DNA. And so hope is reality-based and active. We need to be engaged in the work of hope. It is a virtue, but virtues are practiced like every other virtue. So action is part of this, what psychology is adding to what we already have talked about from a theological perspective. It's powerful, the emotion of hope, and it's most basically related to these big human longings for love, for success. And here, success means wanting to make a difference. It doesn't mean, look at me and I earn all kinds of money and think. It's the desire to want to make a difference. And it's also the desire to live and to live fully and freely, which we name here as survival. So there are 4 ways that we are called to be hopeful. And you can see them in bold print there. 4 ways. In order for me to be hopeful, we have to realize that we have something to say about our life. We have choices. As soon as you say, there's nothing I can do, I don't have any choices, you can't be hopeful. The second thing we've learned in our understanding that we are relational people is hope is about attachment. It really is about a belief that we matter to someone and someone matters to us, that it's the presence of a loved one, a mentor, a friend, a caring community, an ally who fosters this connection and trusting and openness. Hope cannot happen in isolation. So we need to realize we have choices, that we are absolutely need to be in relationship with others, and there's this caring, giving, and take environment. And also it is about caring for self. And here it becomes critical for people in ministry, for all of us, that we need to know how to deal with stress and uncertainty. We also need to live a balanced life, that we need to care for ourselves in order to be able to be hopeful and to be able to be in relationship with others. And finally, remember, these are the psychologists talking. Hope is spiritual, meaning that you can't really be a hopeful person if, in fact, you don't believe there is more to life, that life has meaning. And for us as believers, we believe in a loving, creative creator a benign, loving God who wants the best for us. So interestingly enough, hope has a spiritual dimension, or we might call a faith dimension as part of what it means. So think about choice, connection, self-care, belief in a higher power. And now we're ready for the next slide, where we talk about hopelessness, which is, another way of looking at a poor choice here. When we say that in order to live in hopefulness, we have to be able to generate possibility. And so hopelessness, and I put this here on purpose because we say, oh, hopeless, but it has many faces. Doom, we say, oh, this will never work. Or when we are at a meeting and somebody says, we've already tried that. Or when we're alienated from others, when we don't feel that we have any ability to impact a situation. And a lot of these are related to the things we just talked about. People are not feeling they have a choice, they don't feel connected, and they're just trying to live one day at a time and not in a balanced way. And hopelessness, feeling captive, frustrated, uninspired, oppressed, limited. How many times do we hear other people that we know, or maybe ourselves sometimes, say frustrated, uninspired, oppressed? So hopelessness wears on the mind and body and spirit. And then it's really hard then to live in the present and plan for the future. So, and envision alternatives, be creative and flexible. So trust and openness can be replaced by cynicism, withdrawal, mistrust, and isolation. Think about how much of that is happening around us in our world. And so we really called more than ever to have an open mind, an open heart, and an open will in order to counteract cynicism, withdrawal, mistrust, and isolation. And so I think I tried to say this in a way to kind of keep our attention of what do you want to put in your hope chest? What do we want to take with us from today? I think we need to unearth, as it says here, challenge irrational beliefs, the irrational beliefs about ourselves. Um, I'm stuck here. I can't make any changes. It's just the way it is. You hear people say it's just the way it is. And so we kind of, can get caught in those irrational beliefs and ways of thinking, including individualism, where it's all up to me, which in order to be and live at this time, it can't be all up to me. It has to be, it's up to us. I think, in addition, supportive, caring, mutually empowering, liberating relationships that encourage us to be our best self, to be free, to live fully and freely. It really is so important so that we have in our everyday life trust of others and they trust us, caring, belonging, courage to try something new, and confidence that we can be better than we are. And then, of course, endurance. And we could also add patience, hanging in there. I think the spiritual practices we need that strengthen our faith and connection with a loving God. I'm often talking with new members and saying to them, talk to God about not just what you think, but how you feel. Use your own words. We really need to strengthen our connection with God and be able to express our emotions. Finally, resilience, which is really learning how to cope with stress and anxiety. That's very particular to be able to bounce back from difficult situations and to have some kind of equilibrium in the midst of chaos, things you count on, a structure that works, not a rigid one, but a structure that works. Balance, balance, balance. It's so critical to our human functioning. And finally, naming and addressing fear. Fear probably is the biggest obstacle. We get caught up in fear, and also we fear of being ourselves. What will people think? Fear of loss, even loss of reputation. I think sometimes as women religious, that, people won't like us if we do what? Stand up if we're courageous. Loss of success when we haven't even tried something. And then also, we also can be fearful of death as well, because and especially if we take risks. So, just a couple of final thoughts when we want to talk about here hope as a ministry. We will thrive in hope if we help others be hopeful. There's that old phrase, give what you want to receive. And so, what better way to be generative, to give life in today's world, in a world that often feels hopeless and despairing, that we mentor hope in others? And I think we can do it by offering three things. The first thing is availability, making time, sharing space, being flexible, sensitive to the emotional cues of others, able to just anticipate a need. How can I help? What can I do? Or is there something I can do? Just that gentle asking. The second thing is presence and openness. Yeah, I think focused, quality time. These are similar notions to others. A safe haven. We're learning more and more about the need for psychological safety in order for a person to be themselves, share who they are, and be in relationship with us. And then, of course, we need to be congruent. Our words need to match our actions. And you heard in that prayer, our opening prayer today, calling for that. And then finally, leaving a hopeful imprint, being a potent presence, which we can be, and not being afraid of being ourselves, being being appropriate with what we offer in a given time. And then it requires repeated involvement. So, how many people are you involved with repeatedly, and how important it is to help others by being in relationship with them to and sustaining images that that help us, positive and sustaining images that permeate to their core will take time. So repeated involvement becomes important. And so I leave you with just these last thoughts from Walter Brueggemann, where he did his wonderful book on reality, grief, and hope. And he talks about here, he said, we're called to nurture what is obedient to imagination, in which unuttered possibility is uttered. Thoughts beyond our thoughts are thought, and ways beyond our ways are knowing. And then he offers this little challenge. Walking by sight is likely a return to old ways, while walking by faith is to seek a world other than the one from which we are being swiftly ejected. Whether we like it or not, the world that has been is moving to a new place. And the prophetic tasks he talks about is to have us as a community of faith to make knowing and risky decisions, to trust in God, that indeed Christ is risen. So, with the last thought, we'll leave with Pope Francis and some questions. Pope Francis encouraged us all to make a grateful remembrance of the past, embrace the future with hope, and live in the present by being loving, true friends in communion with others. And so, that question that often gets asked, if not us, then who? If not now, when? Thank you.